If the biggest secret in Silo isn't hidden underground, but sitting in plain sight, not behind a locked vault, not inside the server room, not even at the bottom of the mines, but inside one ordinary room that hundreds of people walk past every single day without ever asking why it exists. Because what if that room isn't forgotten? What if it's being protected? And what if the founders designed the entire silo so that nobody would ever become curious enough to open its door? That sounds impossible. But here's what changes everything. Season 3 quietly keeps drawing our attention toward places people ignore instead of places they fear. Every major revelation comes from someone looking where everyone else stopped looking. Juliet doesn't find the truth because she's stronger than everyone else. She finds it because she refuses to accept that ordinary places are actually ordinary. That pattern isn't random. It's the show's biggest clue. And once you notice it, one disturbing theory begins to explain almost every mystery we've seen. The room everyone walks past is the real secret of the silo. Not because something dangerous is stored inside it, but because that room may actually control how every person inside the silo understands reality. That's not the real mystery. The real mystery is why nobody ever asks about it. Think about that for a second. People in the silo question food shortages. They question mechanical failures. They question judicial. They even question Bernard. But there are certain places they simply accept without curiosity. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Whenever someone gets close to discovering something important, they aren't just stopped physically. Their attention gets redirected. Their priorities suddenly change. New emergencies appear. New conflicts begin. Somebody disappears. Somebody gets arrested. Somebody dies. The investigation never reaches its destination. At first, it feels like coincidence. Then it starts happening again. And again. Until you realize the interruptions aren't protecting information. They're protecting a location. This is the detail everyone missed. The silo isn't only controlling knowledge. It's controlling curiosity. Those are completely different things. Anyone can hide information. But making people stop asking questions? That's much harder. Unless the environment itself has been designed for exactly that purpose. And this is where it gets darker. Imagine growing up your entire life walking past the same hallway every day. The same doors. The same walls. The same rooms. After years of repetition, your brain stops seeing them. Psychologists call this habituation. Your mind filters out familiar things because they appear unimportant. Now, imagine the founders understood this perfectly. What if they intentionally placed the most important room somewhere people would pass every single day? Not hidden. Visible. Because the most effective hiding place isn't darkness. It's familiarity. That's exactly how magicians fool audiences. They don't hide the object. They convince you it's ordinary. Silo has always loved this idea. The biggest lies aren't spoken. They're normalized. People obey rules they never question because questioning never even enters their minds. And that changes how we should look at every location inside the silo. We've spent years focusing on restricted areas. The server rooms, the vaults, the hidden tunnels, the abandoned chambers. But maybe we've been looking exactly where the founders expected us to look. Because if everyone believes secrets belong behind locked doors, nobody investigates the unlocked one. Notice how often the camera quietly lingers on hallways before moving away. Notice how background doors receive just enough attention to register in your mind, but never enough for you to remember them later. Most viewers assume those shots are simply establishing the environment. But Silo rarely wastes visual language. Almost every repeated image eventually gains meaning. Why should these be different? Think about Bernard for a moment. He's obsessed with controlling access. But his greatest strength isn't keeping people away from forbidden places. It's making them ignore places that don't appear forbidden at all. That strategy is infinitely more effective. Because locked doors create curiosity. Ordinary doors destroy it. And once you understand that, Bernard starts behaving differently. Look back at the moments when he calmly walks through public corridors. His confidence isn't coming from power alone. It's coming from certainty. He knows people aren't looking at what's directly beside them. They're always looking ahead. Always chasing the next emergency. Always reacting. Never observing. That's exactly how large conspiracies survive. Not through perfect secrecy, through perfect distraction. But here's something even stranger. Juliet unknowingly breaks this system every single time she investigates. She notices patterns other people ignore. She questions routines everyone else accepts. She treats ordinary details like evidence. And every time she does, she gets closer to something the silo desperately wants hidden. That can't be an accident. Because silo keeps rewarding observation over intelligence. Anyone can solve a puzzle after seeing all the pieces. Very few people notice the missing piece in the first place. That is Juliet's real gift. She sees what everyone else has stopped seeing. And maybe that's exactly why she's dangerous. Because if our theory is right, she isn't searching for the biggest secret anymore. She's walking past it every single day, without realizing the answer, has been standing beside her all along. But before we decide which room that could be, we need to examine every moment where the show quietly pointed toward it without anyone noticing. Because once those clues are placed together, one ordinary doorway begins to look less like part of the silo and more like the lock on its biggest lie. So which room are we actually talking about? Not the vault, not the server room, not the nursery. The room that matters is the one nobody treats like it matters. Because that's exactly how the founders would protect the truth. Think about the design philosophy of the silo. Every important system has layers of security. Judicial protects information. IT protects technology. Mechanical keeps the silo alive. Each department has a visible purpose. But here's what changes everything. What if there is one room whose real purpose is completely different from the one everyone believes? That would be the perfect hiding place. The room would never need armed guards. It wouldn't need alarms. It wouldn't even need to stay locked. People would protect it themselves simply because they believe they already understand what it is. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Throughout the series, characters repeatedly move through the same public spaces. Stairwells, corridors, administrative offices, storage areas, maintenance passages. We begin to recognize them just as the characters do. And that's important. The audience becomes conditioned exactly the same way as the people inside the silo. We stop paying attention. The camera doesn't force us to look. It simply lets the room exist in the background. This is the detail everyone missed. Silo often hides answers in repetition. When something appears only once, it feels important. When something appears 20 times, our brain labels it as background. That isn't lazy storytelling. It's psychological storytelling. The writers know something fascinating about human attention. We remember surprises. We forget routines. And the founders inside the story seem to understand the exact same principle. That can't be a coincidence. Now think about Bernard. Most people believe Bernard's greatest weapon is information. But information only matters after someone starts asking questions. His real weapon is controlling where people look. Notice how every crisis creates a new destination. A generator fails. Someone escapes. A murder happens. A rebellion begins. Everyone starts running toward the latest emergency. Nobody stops. Nobody observes. Nobody asks why certain places never become part of the investigation. And this is where it gets darker. Imagine trying to hide one page inside a massive library.
You could lock it away. Or
you could simply place it inside a book that everybody thinks they've already read. Which method is safer? The second one. Because curiosity disappears the moment certainty appears. That's exactly what may be happening inside the silo. Everyone believes they already know every important room, which means the founders have already won. Now, let's look at Juliet. She constantly breaks one unwritten rule. She refuses to accept labels. When someone says, "That's just how things work," she asks why. When someone says, "That room is only for maintenance," she looks closer. When someone says, "There's nothing there," she assumes there might be everything there. This isn't just curiosity. It's a threat to the entire system. Because authoritarian systems don't survive by hiding facts. They survive by making people stop questioning explanations. Juliet attacks the explanation itself. That's why Bernard fears her. Not because she knows the truth, but because she keeps discovering that the official story never completely fits reality. And every contradiction points toward the same possibility. Someone designed this place to guide human behavior. Not just human movement, human thought. Think about the architecture. The endless spiral staircase isn't simply transportation. It creates exhaustion. People spend hours climbing. They think about reaching their destination, not about examining the walls around them. Every step pulls their attention forward. Every journey becomes predictable. The silo doesn't just organize people physically. It programs observation. That sounds extreme, until you notice how rarely anyone simply stops. Characters are almost always moving, walking, running, working, escaping, searching. Almost nobody pauses long enough to truly study their surroundings. Except Juliet. She notices scratches, missing tools, old bolts, unusual sounds, tiny inconsistencies. Everyone else sees walls. She sees evidence. That difference changes everything. Because the founders never expected someone to examine ordinary spaces with extraordinary attention. Now consider another pattern. Every major truth in Silo begins with something incredibly small. A damaged file,
An old relic.
a broken display, a hard drive, a forgotten message. The truth never announces itself. It whispers. And the people who survive are the ones willing to listen. So, why would the biggest secret be any different? It wouldn't. It wouldn't be behind flashing lights or giant warning signs. It would hide inside something so ordinary that even the audience overlooks it. That's why the room everyone walks past theory becomes stronger with every episode. Not because we've seen what's inside, but because the show keeps teaching us how secrets actually work. They don't hide behind impossible puzzles. They hide behind familiar habits. But here's one final clue before everything changes. Whenever the silo experiences a major crisis, Bernard always seems surprisingly confident about what happens next. Almost as if he knows there is one place, one location, that guarantees control even if every other system fails. The question is, what could possibly be inside that room that's more valuable than weapons, more powerful than surveillance, and more dangerous than the truth itself? Because if we're right, the room doesn't contain an object. It contains the one thing that has been controlling every generation since the very beginning. And once we identify what that is, the entire history of the silo has to be rewritten. Now, we reach the most dangerous part of this theory. Because what if the room everyone walks past doesn't contain a machine? It contains a choice. That sounds strange at first, but look at what the show is actually telling us. Every generation inside the silo believes they are making their own decisions. They choose who to trust. They choose who to love. They choose whether to obey. They choose whether to rebel. But what if those choices have been quietly shaped long before anyone ever makes them? That's not the real mystery. The real mystery is whether anyone inside the silo has ever truly been free. Think about how every system in the silo works. Food is controlled. Information is controlled. History is controlled. Technology is controlled. Even having children depends on approval. Nothing is left to chance. So, why would human behavior be the one thing the founders ignored? They wouldn't. If they planned every other part of society, they almost certainly planned how people would think as well. And this is where it gets darker. Imagine that room isn't an office or a storage space. Imagine it's the original command room built by the founders before the silo was ever populated. Not a place for everyday operations. A place where the rules of society were written. A room filled with records, behavioral studies, psychological profiles, and long-term plans explaining exactly how each generation should be guided. That would explain something that has always felt strange. No matter who comes into power, the system barely changes. Sheriffs change. Engineers change. Judicial officers change. Even rebellions happen. Yet the silo itself continues almost exactly the same way.
Why?
Because the real power was never the people. The real power was the design. This is the detail everyone missed. The founders may have realized that buildings can control people just as effectively as laws. The spiral staircase keeps everyone connected, but also separated by distance. The departments create identity, but also division. The strict hierarchy creates order, but also suspicion. Even simple routines reduce the chances that anyone questions the bigger picture. The architecture isn't just where people live. It is the system itself. And Bernard seems to understand this better than anyone. Many viewers see him as a typical villain. But what if Bernard isn't protecting a room because he wants power? What if he's protecting it because he believes opening it would destroy the only thing keeping the silo alive? That completely changes his character. Every lie, every arrest, every cover-up, every terrible decision. They stop looking like acts of greed. They begin looking like acts of fear. Fear that one discovery could cause total collapse. Notice how Bernard rarely acts emotionally. He acts strategically. He always thinks several moves ahead, almost as if he's following instructions written by someone long before he was born. That's a terrifying thought. Maybe Bernard isn't leading the silo. Maybe he's simply the latest caretaker following a script created by the founders. If that's true, then Bernard is trapped just like everyone else. The only difference is, he knows where the script is hidden. And Juliet? She represents the exact opposite. Bernard protects the system. Juliet questions the system. Bernard believes survival requires secrets. Juliet believes survival requires truth. Neither of them is simply fighting the other. They're fighting two completely different ideas about humanity. One believes people must be controlled. The other believes people deserve to know. That's why their conflict feels so personal. It's not about a single mystery. It's about whether civilization can survive without lies. Now, let's connect every clue. The repeated hallways, the forgotten doors, the carefully designed routines, the endless distractions, the way ordinary places become invisible, the way curiosity is redirected before it becomes dangerous. None of these clues prove that a hidden room exists on their own, but together, they point toward a single possibility. The founders didn't hide the biggest secret behind impossible security. They hid it behind human psychology. They trusted that people would eventually stop noticing what they saw every day. And for generations, they were right. Until Juliet arrived. She doesn't just solve puzzles. She breaks patterns. She notices the ordinary. She refuses to accept easy explanations. And if this theory is correct, she isn't searching for the truth anymore. She's standing only a few steps away from it. The most shocking reveal of season may 3rd not be another underground chamber or another hidden silo. It may simply be one door. A door we've already seen countless times. A door every character has walked past. A door the audience has walked past too. Because the greatest secret in Silo was never hidden from us. It was hidden by us. We dismissed it. We accepted it. We stopped looking. And that may have been the founders' greatest invention of all. So, here's the question that could redefine everything in Season 3. When that ordinary door finally opens, will it reveal the truth about the silo? Or will it reveal that every truth we've believed since Episode 1 was carefully designed to lead us somewhere else?